Data and digitisation are being used to drive value in real assets and improve the services they can provide to the communities using them. One of these solutions, which is being used to bridge the physical and digital worlds in real asset management, is digital twins. And while not a new concept, the way they're being applied today is advancing into new realms of capability. I'm Amanda McMillan from Macquarie Asset Management, and here to help us explore the power of digital twins and what's to come in the future are three leaders in this space. Joshua Ridley, CEO and co-founder of Willow, Bill Rue, CEO of Lendlease Digital, and Scott Ryan, Chief Asset and Operating Officer of Endeavour Energy. Welcome and thank you for joining us today. Joshua, I'll probably start with you and ask you, can you give us a big picture view of what digital twin can do and what drove you to establish a tech startup in Willow?
Well, thanks, Amanda, for having us today. It's a great privilege to be here with Macquarie and with his esteemed colleagues. But digital twin technology, in my view, is going to transform real assets. And what we saw 20 years ago with the social internet, in terms of these big category companies coming through, we're seeing now in terms of the industrial internet. And so what inspired us was that we started in construction, our company, little company here in Sydney, and we could see that spatial data was turning to digital data, and through the construction process, that then they had to tag that data with other types of data. Right to the end of the construction process, and we put live data into that as well. Now, this is what we could call a high fidelity twin. This took us all over the world. So we started working in New York City, Paris, in London, the largest stadium in LA. We're doing Microsoft's campus, other Fortune 500 campuses where they're wanting to get these high fidelity twins through construction. But we actually recognise that to really be a category king or to actually make impact, we had to address the 98% of assets which are already built. Assets which don't go through construction, you have to retrofit. And so over the last 18 months, we've been applying that technology into the existing buildings and existing infrastructure. So trying to find a minimum viable twin that's fast and simple, so fast to deploy, simple to use, secure from a physical protective mindset and also cyber. And lastly, really importantly, open. So open data sources, open tagging. And Bill and other great organisations like Lendlease have joined things such as the Digital Twin Initiative, the Digital Twin Consortium. And so these groups are now forming where members in those groups are able to dictate or at least agree on languages and tagging that can allow our industry to transform.
Great. And obviously that's the high-level benefits, and you talked there about your high-fidelity twin and then going back into legacy assets. Could you enliven it with some examples of where this is come true?
I might use the stadium in LA. This is a very large, iconic stadium. It's probably the largest stadium in the world. It will be the stadium for the LA Olympics in 28, and more recently it will be the Super Bowl next year. And so any stadium, any office building, any rail network has incredible complexity during construction. And Bill, you'd know this through Lendlease, it is a very complex process that is becoming more digital. And so being able to use technology to bring that complexity into simplicity and help with the important handover process that happens from construction into operations is one of the major reasons why our business was successful and is successful on these very complex projects. But as I say, the real opportunity is to make sure that we can address the existing buildings, the existing railway networks. One such network is a rail network is for one of our Australian companies in the Pilbara, who are moving iron ore from the Pilbara off to the port. And so what they want to be able to do is move more iron ore without having temporary speed restrictions. Yep. Today, lots of phone calls, lots of different systems. By having the twin now, they can then aggregate all those systems together and increase the amount of throughput or the amount of trains that are going from the Pilbara to the port. And that's what our technology is able to do, increase profitability, reduce costs, and make sure that we don't have cyber or other incidences.
Great stuff. And I'm involved in the rail industry, so it's great to hear that you are breaking through what that paradigm really of manual processes and weighing the wagons and helping us get through that. So thank you for that work. Bill, I am turning to you in Lendlease. And Lendlease Digital is using digital twins across its real estate developments. Can you tell us about how you apply them and the benefits they deliver for you, for example, in cost and operational efficiencies?
Yeah, Amanda, it's interesting. I joined Lendlease 2.5 years ago to establish this digital business unit, which is really focused internally because we have this $100 billion pipeline. The question is, what can we do to digitize to get a better outcome out of that $100 billion? Everything really focused on development and using the digital twin in development. Now, if you begin to think about what we're trying to do is reduce design complexity, automate more of that design, bring the feasibility analysis and a full design up. Because when you're building a digital twin, you're getting a full fidelity design of that building, but you're also getting the physics. So you can do things you couldn't do before with a piece of paper or these 3D designs. You can really build it before you build it. And the impact to something like that is incredible. So the center point of our Podium technology is a digital twin, coupled with the ability to digitize the processes around it. Now, a couple of examples of what we've done. We took it to a development we just completed up in Singapore. And we looked at and modeled out what would it have looked like if we'd used our technology during the building of that that precinct. And we found that our IRR would have gone up 35%, the MOC would have gone up 20%, the margin would have gone up 16%, and the savings would have gone up 4%. And it would have been better, except Singapore has a unique, very high land value cost. So if you take it into, even though it's higher, relatively lower land value, the numbers would have been even more spectacular given that. The second thing is we're using that same technology in sustainability, because now you can model out your sustainability and energy, which is an important part of really achieving our net zero, absolute zero numbers. We've modeled out inside there the energy usage, and what we found is we can, on traditional, save 3 to 5% and cut that. But now we're seeing opportunities to bring in alternatives. And a good example here in Barangaroo is we're taking 1,800 liters a month of vegetable oil used in the restaurants, converting it into energy, adding it into our grid, and now we're heating floors in there to create a new source. And that, again, drives sustainability. Without the digital twin and digitization, you never get there to be able to manage this at the scale we're talking about. So it's really can have a great impact when you're talking about development.
Yeah, fantastic. So you're getting developments up in a more cost-effective manner, but you're also getting elements of those developments activated that perhaps may have never made it past the drawing board.
And I think Josh said this, it's not, in the future, every design will be a full digital twin earlier on. And just like it did for manufacturing, 20 to 40% cost savings, half the time to develop products. We can do the same thing in the property industry with this technology. Now it's going to take companies like ours 5 years, 10 years to get to the full vision, but that's where we're going. Manufacturing's done it, high tech has done it. Why can't we do it?
Yeah, and the benefits to society must be huge. And I was interested in your Milan example, which is a much wider example because it looks at a whole campus, really.
Yeah.
Could you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so in Milan, we have a number of major developments. The one, that we're deeply involved with the technology and digitization of is called the Milan Innovation District, MIND. And it's the old Expo Center, so it's a beautiful piece of property. They put transportation into it. So we're redeveloping that and if you look at it, it's intended to be an innovation district to bring in jobs. And of course, we know tech jobs always bring in economic growth. It's already got a hospital, university on it, but you can see it's going to be a multi-use environment, and we're just getting started. Well, when we applied digital twin and our Podium technology to it, the first project is already from feasibility to design has gone 80% faster than we've ever seen before. So I think when you start to embrace this, we're seeing the ability to move these forward. So we're using innovation to create an innovation district, which is really we think going to prove out both the technology, but also it's going to bring others in And we're creating an ecosystem around that so that because it's not just our technology, it's how our technology will work with others' technology to create these digital twins. We're focused on development, but you think of operations, you want everything in there to be connected. You want all the data to come in, and you want to find ways to use that data more efficiently and effectively. So data with digital twins, that's where the value in property is going to come over the next decade. And those who master it, they're going to win because they're going to drive their profits.
Yes. Now, my background's in airport operations, so I'm desperate to hear about the application of digital twins in a live operational environment, and delighted that you're here today, Scott. You've successfully built a three-dimensional model of Endeavour's power grid and surrounding habitat. Can you tell us a bit about how you did that and the challenges of applying technology into that existing legacy business?
Yeah, sure. It started with a laser imagery of our network, so LiDAR imagery of our network, which gave us that spatial view of our assets. But it really goes to the points that Josh and Bill are making around the data and retrofitting it, because our network is in some places 50 years old or older, and 50 years ago, the engineers weren't really thinking about one day we'll need a digital twin. So there are some elements of now our network where we've had to work on just closing the gap on some of the data issues that we've got through inspections to understand it. But what we're really doing, and Bill's spot on, I like your expression, you can build it before you can build it. We've actually taken that 3D model and turned it into a structural and engineering twin. So we can start to do things around design that we couldn't do before. We can look at the ratings of our lines to see if we can run it more effectively, more optimally for our customers. So it's really just changing the way we can approach. As recently as in the floods, we had some floods in Sydney back in March. We were able to take our digital twin and model the flood levels to see where it was going to impact our assets, and also where we might have to get ahead of the game, because for safety reasons, you just don't want water approaching live 11,000, 33,000 volt lines, and that's how high the water was getting. So we were able to take some preemptive measures to make things safer for our customers.
Yeah, and you're doing that through the bushfire risk as well by cutting back the habitat, aren't you, from that digital twin, as I understand it?
That's right. So what it does, it looks at how close our trees are growing to the network, and then what we're able to do is just trim those branches back from the mains to keep it safe for our customers. You do it in a very judicious way, of course.
Yeah. And I guess the hook I take from that is that whole move away from reactive maintenance or scheduled maintenance to really proactive where it needs to happen, and the efficiency from that alongside that health and safety benefit is significant, I
It's
imagine.
efficiency, and it's also the discipline. So before LiDAR and before 3D digital models, we were using people just looking up saying, yeah, I think it's about 3 metres, that's okay. But of course, with LiDAR and digital twins, you can get it down to the millimetre.
Yeah.
So your analysis and the ability to be able to rectify situations before they occur, just so much better.
I think I want to go back and run the airport now with a digital twin, and I don't need to maintain every chiller unit just month by month. We can take a much more thoughtful approach.
Well, it's an interesting point, sorry, Amanda, that you make there. I think every 5 years or so I look at my career and say, how did we do our job 5 years ago? But just technology just keeps marching on.
Now, staying with you, Scott, I know you've also launched an advanced distribution management system. Tell us a bit about how that works and the benefits it's bringing.
So we operate an electrical business, a distribution business. The advanced distribution management system, it's an electrical digital twin of our network. So it tells us the status of our network in real time. So this is really important for us and for our customers. It enables us to know when we have customers without power and helps us to find a better way to get the power back on for our customers. Now, where this gets really important is that the digital twin, the electrical digital twin, starts to use some of the intellect through rules that we give it, the intellect that normally sits within our operators. So now we're getting automation out into our network, and what the digital twin can do is when there's a fault, it can say, did that particular automated switch see it? Did you see it? Did you see it? It's between you two. Everyone stays on. Everybody stays on. We get 90% of the customers back with their supply, and we can roll the truck to where the problem is. So it's a really good outcome for our customers as well.
And do you have stats on that about the customer benefits? Because it's fascinating to build things more cheaply and to drive value in these real assets, but getting right back to the customer experience.
Yes. So what we measure is the average interruption duration for customers, which can be sometimes in a given year around an hour and a half. Every customer across our network, on average, an hour and a half without supply. Our ambition is to get that down below 1 hour and certainly creep down towards the 40 odd minutes, which we think we can do based on what we've seen around automation around the world in this sort of way.
Great, which is what we are about here. We want to
Yeah.
make these assets better for those using them.
Yeah.
And Josh, if I come back to you, we've heard now about developing a new site and going back into legacy, and you mentioned it briefly at the start, but how do you see your business spread now between greenfield and brownfield? What's the kind of rough ratio and what's happening there?
It's a great question, Amanda, and I want to build on to answer that question, what Scott's been talking about. We've felt customers like Endeavour. Endeavour's not a customer of ours yet, but Endeavour Energy, what you're going through, we're seeing customers want to do this. So you mentioned airport. One of our 8 digitisation assets, which we call a major project, is DFW Airport. So it's 8 terminals, 8 runways. Now they are going through the process of not just the live data and the static data, but they actually want all the spatial data because they want to be able to do occupancy tracking, where people are moving through the airport from a safety and a security perspective. Groups like Homeland Security are starting to think about, okay, how could we utilise Twin for entrance and exits out of the United States? So we have 10 of our customers that we've called the first 15. The first 18 actually, but 10 and 8. But 8 assets that are in new construction, Melbourne Metro, DFW, a number of other assets such as Cross River Rail, big Fortune 500 company campuses. So there's 8 assets that are moving from new construction into operations. These are really big assets, like Melbourne Metro is over $12 to $14 billion. Then we've got 10 customers, of which those customers represent 25,000 assets. So one customer has 12,500 buildings. Now we've called them the first 10 because they're the first to digitise. And I'll use Henry Ford as an example here. I think 100 years ago, the Roaring '20s, he said, you can buy a car from me as long as it's black. Right, so we've reduced the price point, made it more simple, made it more secure and easy to deploy. Because the great thing about new construction is you get a lead time to build it all out. But then people look at those. We've done a building in New York City with Brookfield, One Manhattan West, 2 million square foot tower. Amazing. It's been on America by Design. Everyone looks at it and goes, wow, it's great, but it's a Rolls Royce compared to a Model T. When you've got asset owners that have lots of different buildings at different ages, like your assets, it needs to be fast and simple, secure and open. And I'll go back to the cloud players. Amazon, Microsoft and Google are all seeing the opportunity that's emerging. Bill, you mentioned manufacturing. Microsoft and Amazon particularly have been strong in the manufacturing side. We've been working very closely with Microsoft, and Microsoft is helping those customers and us digitise more quickly. I'll make one last point. I feel like post-COVID, we've seen our customer base want to digitise more quickly because COVID showed them that they could centralise, say, operations. Not have to have every operating team in every building everywhere, but centralise operations. One of our customers, Oxford Properties, has 400 assets scattered all over the world. Different BMS systems, building management systems. Different types of operating systems within all of these buildings. So to centralise that's quite a project, but to bring that into Toronto and then manage that across their whole portfolio is what they're doing.
Yeah. And has anyone else seen that speed of activation through COVID or, in your asset, Scott, or in Lendlease's portfolio? Have you seen a greater appetite?
Well, I think what we're seeing is that people who, the traditional business people are using technology more than they ever have, right? And I think what's happened is that's opened the door to move things faster. So we're seeing the movement of digitization, interestingly enough, globally, is happening at a faster rate. If I talk to a lot of my, let's say, peers in other industries, we're seeing it occur. And then even when you look at this idea of digital twins, it's not just in the property utility space, it's in all spaces. And so you begin to see, we're seeing it in healthcare, what stops in the future. Every person will have a digital twin, I would suspect 25 years from now, and all the data about you isn't going to be in a bunch of paper records. It's going to be in your twin, and we're going to find that it'll be more predictive healthcare, more predictive maintenance, not even proactive. We're moving from reactive, proactive to prediction. And so any place that a crystal ball is useful, that's what a digital twin is. It's a crystal ball. And it sounds like magic, but that's what technology typically does. It takes something and make it look like magic. And I think that's how people should look at it, because that'll have a huge impact in all these industries.
I think the only point I'd add to all of that is that COVID, just in a more general way, really showed the world that when you've got a problem and you really need to move fast, you can do it.
Yeah.
It's about locking into what's really important and just get cracking.
Great.
One point on top of COVID too, I think that the cyber risk has, or catastrophic enterprise risk, I should say, as well as cyber risk has been heightened. So, with IT, you've got the IT history, and there's a lot of work that's been done in terms of cyber risk in the IT networks with malware and so on. But where there hasn't been as much work is in the OT, operational technology side of things. And so owners and managers become very aware and very concerned that threat actors, whether it's state-sponsored actors or other, are already in their utilities or within their buildings. And so our customers are seeing this as a major reason to digitise, because by digitising, then they feel they have a greater control on what they don't know now. So in a building in New York City could have a threat actor sitting in it, and it could be utilised for whatever the threat actor wants to do. And so we've been working with Microsoft, a new product that's coming out to market called Azure Defender, which you can install into a grid, or you can install through the construction phase to make sure that all of those networks are scanned, and at least you know what the vulnerabilities are at the very first instance. So the Twin I see as being a very important foundational technology, maybe like electricity 100 years ago, where you're electrifying a building to get an appliance so that you can do something with that appliance. Similarly with digital twin, you're electrifying a building to get data to give an application. And that application could be a better secure system, or it could be space utilisation, or better construction, or better maintenance, or better customer service.
And just hold on with that thought then about the future. Bill, you may already have asked it, but I may already have answered it, sorry, but where do you see this going with Lendlease in the future around digital twins? What are the possibilities that you haven't yet untapped?
So I think that the digital twin in our mind is in many ways that end application, that crystal ball. And if you could have a crystal ball on any decision you made in your life, would you want that? It does become that. And the thing we got to remember is you got a lot of data in the world today, and so what do you do with it all? Well, putting in the digital twin gives us something to do with the data. It also becomes a way for you to have greater clarity about the implications, because oftentimes in a spreadsheet you just can't get all the implications. The last thing is it's bringing in all the physics, and we've never done that before, and we still don't even know exactly what that means. But I think when you think about the big challenges we faced in our industry, the climate changes that are coming, and have we really thought through all the climate issues when we build something? Think about what that means for insurance if your building has a better predictability on climate change. Think about how you're going to feel as a business if you've got a better ESG, specifically sustainability goal, and the twin is helping to ensure you're really meeting that. These things cannot be done. These big problems cannot be solved without this technology. So I think that it forms the basis for the next generation application. I think in the future, I'd say we'll look back and wonder why we use spreadsheets for so long, because it does become something that can replace that and give us more insight, which is what we've been doing with spreadsheets for so long. So for us, it's the center point of where value comes to solve not just the design issues and the operational issues, but these foundational issues about how are we going to provide better places. It's only going to come through being able to take all that data and do something this complex. And I mentioned the healthcare community. I would just say it sounds crazy, but every human having its own digital twin, that will make us healthier, more predictive. And what do we want? We don't want to know what's happening when it happens. We want to know it may happen and what changes should I make to be able to deal with it. And I think that's what the end game is for us.
Right. And Scott, anything from Endeavour's perspective about where you see it heading?
I see a bit of integration into the future. So I talked about two digital twins that we have, a structural and engineering digital twin, an electrical digital twin. Just see integration. I also think, just leveraging off Bill's points, we don't know what some of our future use cases will be. We weren't expecting the flood. The flood came along. We thought, hang on, we can use our digital twin on this. And I think over the years to come, our smart people are going to be looking at digital twins, just finding all these new use cases. And then suddenly I'm 5 years on saying, I don't know how I did my job 5 years ago without all this stuff.
And Joshua, barriers that you see to this? I mean, it sounds amazing. Crystal ball, I'll take a crystal ball for any decision. Count me in. But any barriers that you see to progress?
You know, we're 20 years into the internet century. I think we're 3 years maybe into the industrial internet century. And so the barrier is status quo. So I just do what I've always done and I don't change because so the elevators work. I pay big maintenance costs, but I don't really know whether they're uptime or downtime. I pay my heating and cooling costs, and it worked before, so why not do that again? I think so. I think complacency is a barrier to adoption of the digitisation. But where I'm seeing the change, and Scott, you mentioned this, is that the owners and managers themselves are driving the change. It's not the suppliers that are. We're pushing on an open door, and what we've found is that the customers that see the need to digitise, they don't know how to do it, and there's not enough players out there that have been sophisticated enough to do it. Because if they go to the traditional big players, perhaps that have been in this space before, they go, oh, but this gives me another version of what you gave me before. But then the smaller players like ours, we need to have the backing of the Microsofts, the Googles, the Amazons to make sure that the customer is content and happy that what they're doing with you is cyber secure, it's fast and simple, and it's open. So I would say that the challenges are great, but the opportunity is way greater. Like the opportunity, it's so exciting to be, working with amazing organisations that want to change the way they do things. They want a better world, and whether it's energy, whether it's sustainability, whether it's just, we want to make it easier for our maintenance people. We want to make it better for those tenants, those occupants that are coming into our building to make sure that the spaces are right. I mean, there's a company here in Australia that has 26 office buildings. They're installing sensors in all of the floors in their buildings. Now, before they had the twin, that data would just float off to the sensor companies. Now they've got that data, they can overlay that data. They can start to give great insights to the tenants about what they're doing with their spaces and so on and suggest changes. So I believe this is going to be the technology that transforms real assets. I believe managers that get behind this technology can do things like what you said, Scott, that they wouldn't have even imagined and be able to manage catastrophic enterprise risk in front of it. The cyber risk, enterprise risk, it's there and we need to solve it.
Great. Well, as someone, who's involved in managing real assets, I have to say I feel really uplifted. The idea that we can work with people like yourselves on a product that can actually liberate us in terms of how we manage those assets, drive value in them, but also provide a much better experience for the millions of people who are using our assets every day. Thank you most sincerely for those enlightening comments and the discussion that's flowed.
Thank you.
Great to have you.
Thank you very much.